Over to you, Irene.
Okay, welcome everybody to today's Kabbalat Shabbat. It's at a critical moment because we're all waiting on tenterhooks, as I've said, about the hostages coming through. We hope they'll be safe and well. But in the meantime, we will carry on with our Kabbalat Shabbat. And I will, without further ado, invite Morris, who's going to give our Devar Torah today.
Oh, good afternoon. If anyone has news of the hostages, feel free to interrupt. That's fine. I'd like to dedicate this Devar Torah to Jenny. It started 545 years ago, on the 1st of November, 1478, 26th of Marcheshvan, 5239. The parcha was Chaya Sarah, but it was not the first of its kind, but probably the most well-known. But nobody expected the Spanish Inquisition. The Inquisition was created through a papal bull, ad abolendum, issued at the end of the 12th century by Pope Lucas III to combat heresy in southern France. Rome was also particularly concerned that the Iberian Peninsula's large Muslim and Jewish population would have a heretical influence on the Catholic population. Thus, Rome pressed the kingdoms to accept the Papal Inquisition. In 1492, Columbus sailed the ocean blue, and the Jews were forcibly expelled from Spain. There is a certain amount of traction that Columbus was looking for a safe place for the Jews. He discovered what would later be known as America, but I think it had already been discovered. At this time, many Jewish families from Aragon in Spain were forcibly converted. They were known as conversos, crypto-Jews, Marianos, and New Christians, or secret Jews. To continue the practice of Judaism, many families fled to Portugal. However, luck was not with these emigres, and 5 years later, in 1497, they were forcibly converted to Catholicism, along with the other Jews and Muslims in Portugal at that time. Filipa Mendes, the sister of Francisco Mendes and Diogo Mendes, was married to one of these converted families, headed by Alvaro de Luna. In 1510, he had a daughter. Her name was Gracia in Portuguese, or Gracia in Spanish, or Hannah in Hebrew, which means grace. Her Christianized name, however, was Beatrice de Luna Marquez. Donna Gracia, or La Senora, the lady, grew up to be one of the wealthiest Jewish women of Renaissance Europe and a philanthropist. In 1528, Beatrice de Luna married her uncle in Lisbon and the extraordinarily rich black pepper trader Francisco Menendez. The couple were believed to have been married in a great cathedral in Lisbon, in a public Catholic wedding, and then to have had a hidden Jewish ceremony, including the signing of a ketubah. Portugal was beginning to feel the mighty arms of the Inquisition, which made life unbearable for conversos. The people who, like Donna Gracia, were living secretly as good Jews, but had adopted the Catholic Church for appearance's sake in the hope of chances to escape. Though Donna Gracia had to leave considerable part of her huge wealth behind her, she fled Portugal and settled in Antwerp, where her brother-in-law, Diogo, was the head of the branch of Menendez Nassi firm, which had connections in most European courts. Many other conversos were then coming to the capital of Flanders to build new homes, but the powerful arms of the church began to be felt there too, and the conversos found that they had to be even more careful there to appear as good Christians, instead of gaining freedom they'd sought when they fled Spain and Portugal. Donna Gracia was apparently a woman of extraordinary beauty, cultured and wealthy. She was highly respected by the noble and influential people of the highest rank in France and Flanders and other countries with whom the Menendez establishment dealt. But being a good Jewess, she hated every moment that she had to hide her true feelings and felt very uncomfortable in her disguise. She began to make plans to leave Antwerp for a free country. Suspecting she planned to leave her entire wealth, Emperor Charles V tried to seize her fortune. Dona Gracia succeeded in leaving Antwerp in 1549 with her daughter, her widowed sister, her niece, and most of her wealth. They travelled to Venice, from which port many vessels left for distant lands, where Jews did not need to be afraid of living as Jews. Following in the footsteps of her nephew, the famous Don Joseph Nassi, who had already found a haven in Turkey and become part of one of the most foremost men in Europe as a minister to the Sultan, she planned to go to Constantinople. The King of France, a willing tool of the church, was very angry at her leaving Antwerp, and more so in her taking most of her wealth with her before he could confiscate it. At his instigation, the governors of Venice put her and her family in prison and confiscated her huge wealth before she could sail for Turkey. But then Don Joseph Nassi used his influence with the Turkish Sultan, who was only too glad for an excuse to start trouble with the competing Venetian traders. His government sent a special envoy to Venice with a request to release the converso woman and her wealth. But it took 2 years of negotiations and threats of actual war until Dona Gracia was released, and along with her daughter, settled temporarily in Ferrara, where they openly resumed the Jewish practice. By 1552, Dona Gracia settled in Constantinople, where she became the center of worldwide help to conversos and Jews suffering. Her wealth was used not only for business, but by favors of princes, opening the doors to many of the persecuted. She fostered Jewish culture, and poets wrote at great length in praise of her many achievements as a patron and helper of Jewry in those dark days. She built synagogues, established yeshivot and libraries, and supported scholars and students of the Torah. She helped to resettle hundreds of conversos, enable them to return to their Jewish faith. Many thousands of conversos and other persecuted Jews called her by no other name than our angel. In 1558, Dona Gracia was granted a long-term lease in the Tiberias region in Galilee, a largely desolate place and part of the Ottoman Syria, not Palestine, at the time, including in exchange for guaranteeing a substantial increase in the yearly tax revenues for the Sultan Suleiman the Magnificent, he who built the walls of Jerusalem. As a result, she obtained ruling authority over the Tiberias area. With the help of the Sultan, she then began to rebuild the area's abandoned towns to make them available for refugees so they could settle there if they wished. Her aim was to make Tiberias into a major new center for Jewish settlement, trade, and learning. A Jewish traveler who visited Tiberias around this time mentioned how she had lent support to the Jewish community there. This venture had often been called one of the earliest attempts at a modern Zionist movement. Dona Gracia died in Istanbul in 1569. Although she disappeared into oblivion almost immediately and remained hardly known for the subsequent 400 years, that began changing in 1969 due to a new sense of relevance among today's women. Indeed, Dona Gracia is fast becoming a cult figure on the world stage. New York City designated Dona Gracia Day in June 2010, followed by a similar proclamation in Philadelphia a year later. Israel's political leaders honored her for the first time in October 2010. The Turkish government sponsored a Dona Gracia evening in New York City, and she also sponsored an exhibition in Lisbon. There have been lectures, articles, and festivals in her honor all over Europe. Growing numbers of women in business and the professions identify with her ambition, courage, and even personal loneliness. An Italian white wine has been named after her. The Israeli government Coins and Medals Corporation has produced a commemorative medal. She was idolized by the descendants of the conversos she saved, and now living in southern Italy, Central and South America, and the United States. A feisty woman who was proud of her Jewish heritage and one who provided tzedakah in its fullest sense. Truly an Eshet Chayil, a woman of worth. As a matter of interest, the Inquisition ended on the 15th of July, 1834. That's it. There's other bits there. Anyway, Shabbat Shalom. Thank you for listening.
Kyle. Well done, Morris.
Morris, that was really interesting. Yes, Dorothea was definitely a wonderful role model, not only for women, but for all Jews. That was wonderful. Thank you.